When I did that with party, when I did that with party, when I did that with party, I did it. When I
Oh shit! Fuck.
Damn it.
Come on. Done. Come on. It's gotta be. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. No. Fuck me. Ouch. Come on. Okay. No. Where's that note? Boston! Boston, get in here. Boston. Get. Boston, get in here. You know better. Come on. Seriously? Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Oh, God, where do we go? No, I don't want that. I want Chrome. Chrome. Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Makes up very loud. It's right here. Can you hear me now? Okay. So here we go. Right. Let's do this. That forward. There. That works. We are all at least somewhat aware of how our federal government works. But do you... Where am I in time? Because it's still... What is this? I don't know what that is. Okay. We are all at least somewhat aware of the We are all at least somewhat aware of the way that our federal government works. But are you aware about how? Okay. We are all aware. We are all at least somewhat aware about how our federal government works. But do you know how much? How much do you know? Okay. We are all at least somewhat aware of how our federal government works. But how much do you know about how your state government works, or your city or your municipal government? Do you even know how much of your taxpayer dollars are being spent on the people that represent you? And given what you do know or find out, are you getting what you pay for? My name is Christopher Judge, and today I'm going to be giving you some basic information about the governments that impact our country, our states, and our local interests. I hope that by the end of this talk, you'll have a better understanding of what to expect from your elected officials, and you'll want to make sure that you've gotten your money's worth. Like I said, most state governments are structured the same way that our federal government is structured, with an executive, a legislative, and a judicial branch. There's only one state that does not have a similar format, and that's Nebraska, because they only have one house of their legislative branch. Our federal government and all of the 49 other states have two houses of legislature. They all work in the same way. The legislature makes the laws, the executive enforces the laws, and the judicial interprets the laws. Today, we're going to talk more about the legislative branch. Just like the federal government and state governments are very similarly structured, because they're much smaller, most municipal governments don't have the two houses and act exactly the same way, but they do have legislative bodies like city councils or groups of aldermen that do write and make laws that eventually get passed through them. So each level of government has different responsibilities and different expectations. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution outlines the federal government's responsibilities, as well as some of the things that they cannot do. By implication, it also outlines what state governments can do, and even some municipal governments and what they cover. For example, our federal government is responsible for things like taxes and borrowing money, foreign relations and trade, coining money, post offices and roads. The federal government is exclusively responsible for funding, managing, and making sure that all of those things work for the entire country. They're referred to as enumerated or exclusive jurisdiction. That's not right. Powers. Great, Chris. There is some overlap between states and federal government in what they call concurrent powers. Taxes, banks and courts, creating laws, and spending for the public welfare are all concurrent powers that both the federal, state, and even the municipal governments have for themselves. There are, however, some powers that are reserved exclusively for the state, such as intrastate or interior commerce, public schools, public health and safety, licenses and elections. And then going down further to municipal governments, they're often responsible for building roads and transit, recreational, both infrastructure and activities, as well as municipal services. A lot of times your trash is actually handled by your county or your city, not your state or the federal government. So how do they do it? Well, the federal government is a full-time job to be a member of the legislature. They work approximately, when it comes down to it, about 145 days a year, according to, who is it? Crap. It's not that one. It's this one. According to. Okay. The U.S. Senate reports on their website that their calendar is 146 working days in this year. That's about average for both the Senate and the House at the federal level. States and municipalities do vary somewhat, as every place has its individual needs. But in the state of Colorado, legislators are bound to a 120-day 120-day regular session in which to write and pass laws. They can be called back for special sessions, and the longest special session on record was actually 71 days long. So they can be in session for just as long, if not longer, than our federal representatives. And our local representatives, well, that one is really up to, again, the local municipality. But in the case of where I live, Aurora, our city council members work approximately 30 to 50 hours a week for about 30 weeks out of the year. So they're considered most state legislators and most municipal legislative bodies are considered part-time, even though they work not a very big difference in days. That's important because when you look at what they get paid, that's all different too. A federal legislator will make a base salary of $174,000 a year. That's just their base salary. That doesn't include per diems or other expenses that get paid for as well. That's for their 145 days. In Colorado, that part-time legislature that works 120 days will be getting $50,802 for next year's work. And the city council that's working 30 to 50 hours a week for more than half the year, they only get $32,000 a year. So our federal legislators who go back and forth to Washington, that's a full-time job, and that's understandable. But our local and our state and municipal legislators, in many cases who are working just as many, if not more, don't exactly get the same rate of pay. In fact, the $50,802 that a legislator will make in Colorado next year doesn't even meet the median income for a resident of the state. Okay, so we're going to use so we're going to start with starting with structure. Is this one? Please always forgettable source. It's in there. We're going to do this in one take. Here we go. We are all at least somewhat aware of how our federal government works. But do you know how much do you know about your state government or your municipal government in your local city council or your township? Do you even know how much of your taxpayer dollars is going to pay the people who represent you? And are you getting your money's worth? My name is Christopher Judge, and today I'm going to be giving you some basic information about governments that impact our country, our state, and our local government. Let's start again. We all know. We all are at least somewhat aware of how our federal government works. But how much do you know about your state government or your local municipal government? Do you even know how much your taxpayer dollars are being spent on people that you elected to represent you? And given what you know or what you're going to find out, are you getting your money's worth? My name is Christopher Judge, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about some basic information about our governments at the federal, state, and municipal levels that govern our interests. I hope that by the end of this talk, you will know a little bit better just how our government works and how to find out. We are all at least somewhat aware of how our federal government works. But how much do you know about your state government or your municipal or your city council? Do you even know how much of your taxpayer dollars are going to pay for the Ugh! We are all at least somewhat aware of how our federal government works. But how much do you know about your state government or your local municipal government? Do you even know how much of your taxpayer dollars are going to pay for the people that you elected to represent you? And given what you know or that you're going to find out, are you getting what you paid for? My name is Christopher Judge, and today I'm going to be giving you some basic information about governments that impact our lives at the federal, state, and local levels. I hope that by the end of this talk, you will have a better understanding of what to expect from your elected officials, but also that you'll want to know exactly what you're paying for. So the 10th Amendment of the Constitution outlines some basic rules around what our federal government should look like. We're going to focus a little bit on the legislature, but there's three branches. There's the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. The legislative branch is made up of two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. And most of our state governments actually follow the same exact pattern with an executive, a judicial, and a legislative, and two houses of legislative governance, except for one state. Nebraska only has one house of legislative governance. The 10th Amendment also provides a lot of definition for the responsibilities and powers that the federal government may or may not have. And it also, by implication, outlines some of the responsibilities and powers that both state and municipal governments have as well. So the federal government has exclusive powers of making coins, international trade and relationships, things like the post office and roads. There are some powers that are overlapped between state and federal. Those are things like taxes, courts, and okay. We are all at least somewhat aware of how our federal government works. But do you know how much we are all at least somewhat aware about how our federal government works. But how much do you know about your state government or your local and municipal government? Do you even know how much of your taxpayer dollars are going to pay for the salaries of the people that are elected to represent you? And given what you do know about that, are you getting your money's worth? My name is Christopher Judge, and today I'm going to be talking about some basic information about how our different governments work at the federal, state, and local levels. I hope that by the end of this talk, you're going to have a bit of a better understanding about what to expect from your elected officials, but also you'll maybe want to go out and look and see exactly if you are, in fact, getting your money's worth. So the 10th Amendment outlines basically how our federal government works with an executive, legislative, and a judicial branch. We're going to focus a little bit more on the legislative branch, which has two houses, a House of Representatives and a Senate. And those are the two bodies that make laws for the country. Almost all of our states follow the same kind of pattern. They have an executive, a judicial, and a legislative branch, and that legislative branch has two houses, with one exception, Nebraska. They only have one legislative house, but they still operate the same way. Most municipalities also operate in a similar fashion, but just on a much smaller scale, just because they are dealing with a much smaller population and a much smaller geographic area to work with. There's not as many of them, but they do follow a lot of the same patterns as both our state and federal governments. The 10th Amendment also provides some guidance as for what powers the federal government does or does not have. It also, by implication, lets us know what some of the powers that the states have, and then also in turn some of the municipalities. There are some things that are exclusive to the federal government, things like making coins, the post office and roads, or declaring war. There are also some shared powers between both states and federal government, taxes, banks, spending for public welfare. Those are all things that any legislative body is going to be responsible for just because they're dealing with the people. But there are some things that are reserved exclusively for states. Things like schools, licenses and elections, and intrastate commerce or interior commerce within the state. Municipal branches, or I'm sorry, municipal governments do also have some things that they are responsible for, like building codes, recreation and recreational facilities, and municipal services. How many of you knew that your trash, if it's done by the government, is actually done by your city or your county? So how do they do it all? Well, the U.S. Senate reports that they are in session for 146 days this year. And that's about average for both the House and the Senate at the federal level. They're usually around 145 to 150 days a year in session, which means that they're in the office in Washington arguing or debating bills so that they can get them passed. The National Conference of State Legislatures reports that there are only 10 full-time state legislatures in the country. All of the other states have part-time legislatures or legislatures that may even meet only every other year. Colorado, as an example, has a 120-day regular session where all of the legislators are in-house working on the bills. They can also get called back for special sessions, though. So that 120 days can be added on to throughout the year. And the longest special session for the state of Colorado on record was 71 days. At the municipal level, where I'm from in Aurora, city council members work approximately 30 to 50 hours a week for about 6 months, according to the City of Aurora website. So if you look at whether you're working at the federal, state, or municipal level, there's not a lot of difference in the number of days of work, but only the federal government is a full-time job. A lot of state representatives and municipal representatives have to have other jobs just to make ends meet because they're not considered full-time legislatures, and their pay is actually quite different. So a federal legislator makes $174,500 a year. In Colorado, a legislator working that same or similar number of days, $50,802, which is not even the same as the median income in the state for which those people represent. Going down more locally to city government, Aurora City Council members, $32,000 a year. Now, Aurora City Council has had on the books, or excuse me, on the record, a consideration to actually almost triple their salaries over the last couple of years. They've never brought it to the constituents, so they've never had to vote on it. But a number of municipalities and state governments are starting to look at the way that they compensate their representatives or their workers and seeing that there's some things that may need to change. There are some cities that are actually paying very well, though. Denver pays $110,595 as a base salary for their city council members. In Massachusetts, the state legislators have a base salary of $82,044, but some of them make actually as much as $200,000 compensated for by the state for one person. In New Mexico, their state legislators don't even get a base salary. They're all volunteers, essentially. So there are huge differences in the amount that representatives get compensated for the work that they do, even though if you look at them, a lot of them are actually working the same, not very different number of days. In fact, state legislators get a lot more done in their time in session than our federal legislators do. They pass about 4 times as many bills every year as the federal government representatives do. So I hope this gives you a little bit of an idea of what your government looks like, because it's actually probably a lot more than you think it was. But I would also encourage you, go ahead and find out, who is your representative? What are they doing for you? And is it worth the money that you're paying them? Done.